Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of The Secret Origins of Mint Condition. I am one of your hosts, James, and I'm sure you're all anxious to be listening to this episode. We're finally giving our thoughts on the recent Superman James Gunn movie that we've been talking about for the past few months. The episode's finally here. So, joining me in the Fortress of Solitude to talk about this movie is, of course, Joe.
Hey James and John, how you doing? It's pretty cold in this Fortress Solitude. I got to check out that thermostat on the wall
Yeah.
there.
And, of
Heat up.
course, joining us, returning guest, friend of the show, John is with us as well.
Hey everyone, glad to be here. Especially glad to be talking about this movie.
Yes. So I guess as I say this all the time, when we're doing a recap of a show or a movie or something, we're not going to do the normal play-by-play, scene by scene. We're going to give our highlights, our thoughts, maybe some loving criticisms if we have any, and do all that. So I guess we'll just start with overall thoughts. John, since you're the guest, what was your overall thoughts about the movie?
Oh, this movie is well. First, I'll do my official rating. Um, this is 4.5 out of 5 stars for me.
Oh, okay.
That's a high, and I think that now, yeah, this is about my favorite Superman movie. It's a tough contest because you have the original Superman, you have Superman 2. Those are really hard movies to beat. But this movie came in. I was watching it in the theater, and I was just smiling the whole time. Like that was the vibe, and it was a really great experience to see in the movie theater. I know that even as of recording this, it actually just dropped on digital,
Yes, it did.
and in September it will be available on physical media, which I'm still a big proponent of. But seeing it in the movie theater is quite the experience. There just the way the cinematography in this movie, when you see the S, the way they show the S on the costume, everything else, it takes you right into like, this is Superman. This is everything. And I don't know how to describe why that triggered that for me, but that I just leave to the magic of the director and the cinematographer. They did it to where it was like, oh, I'm in a Superman movie here. Like I'm watching this, I'm back in a Superman comic again. And then of course, just the story and the acting and the portrayal by David Cornsweet. Just like Cornsweet. I always get it
Corn
wrong.
sweat. Yeah,
Corn
that's the way I pronounce it.
Um,
Yeah.
brilliant. A great young Superman. Definitely has a little. Like I feel like this is sort of the Superman we would have gotten if Smallville had been like 4 seasons and then they had Superman. I
Interesting.
feel like that's sort of the vibe I got from it. And it was Superman again. I felt like we're back with a real hopeful sense, somebody trying to do good and making. I mean, as a viewer, I felt good about it. It restored hope, which is what I think Superman's always been about, a big hopeful thing. But most importantly, it's fun. The music is great. There's a lot to get into on how the music was designed for this. Very much a James Gunn vibe of like how music is woven into the movie, not just the score, but what the score means in terms of the style of music, the pop music that's in it, the punk, everything else, brilliantly done. So yeah, 4.5 out of 5 stars. Can't recommend it enough, and I hope this is a good sign of what's to come for new DC movies.
Mm,
I hope so as well.
very good
Yeah.
point.
Yeah, that was. I'll go to Joe, and then I'll give my thoughts. Joe, you're obviously the longest Superman fan in this podcast, so
Yeah. Yes. If you get my boots, they're gonna need a lot of cleaning because they're old. Let's see. I'm glad you mentioned the cinematography, John, because and how it brought you into the film. This movie is so unlike, and we're not here to trash Zack Snyder, but that was a different take. It was dark, not only in tone, but it was just dark. Period. I mean, the palette was dark, and this palette is not dark. It's light. It's colorful, and I think that adds to the hopefulness of the story. It brings you into the world because when you're an 8-year-old, 10-year-old kid, and you open up the comic book and you see those colors bursting at you, you can't help but be drawn in. Wow, this is amazing. That's how I felt when I read my first Superman comic, my first Batman, Spider-Man, Fantastic Four. I was just drawn in by the colors, and of course the artwork and the way it was laid out. But yes, this draws you right in. Obviously, it does draw you because it's in medias res. It's right in the middle of the action. It's the way it starts, but I think the color palette is very important. and it brings you into the film very quickly. And you know what? If you went in there and you slept, you had a late night and you got in really early in the morning, you were kind of like, this thing would just grab you by the neck and wake you up. You couldn't help, just your irises would open up. I was rating from zero. I was rating from 0 to 10. So you did a 0 to 5. If I'll stick with my rating. It's 10. So I'm going to give this an 8 to an 8.5. Because there's two things. James and I discussed this on texting. There's two things that do bother me about the film. They're not major. Well, one's kind of major, but Superman the movie, Superman 2, and now Superman, James Gunn Superman. It surpasses. I mean, it blows everything again. I'm not a Zack Snyder basher. It blows the Snyderverse out of the water, and it leapfrogs Superman Returns, which is a movie I like a lot. A very adult, very different type of Superman movie. And it's so I would give it probably an 8.5, maybe even a 9, because Superman 1 and Superman 2 they're solid 10s. But yeah, I enjoyed it. I found it a lot. It was fun. It was. It had a good pace to it. It moved along very well. I heard some people say that there was some transition problems. I don't think so. I never felt like I was taken out and then dragged back into the film. I thought everything moved along at a decent pace, and it made sense where things happened. So yeah, I discredit that notion. So those are my initial thoughts.
Yeah, it was I mean, I'll just go in line. I thought it was great. Also, I thought what many people have said it is a true comic book movie in its very essence. It left me with hope also leaving the theater. I felt very hopeful. I felt very light. I felt invigorated by the movie. I feel like it's a real portrayal of Superman in all his forms in the comics in the way you want. That's a good point, John. Too. It's kind of like that's Smallville kind of take.
I like that.
Because I thought he was just a great Superman, and he was a good Clark Kent. And Joe, we did the podcast on, but you could definitely see All-Star Superman DNA weaved throughout this entire movie.
I can see that, but I got to tell you, I got some notes here that are callbacks to just about every Superman film, where I saw things that I'm not saying he stole them, but I'm saying a good auteur, as a director is supposedly referred to sometimes, would and he's obviously mining almost 90 years of Superman stuff.
Well, as we talked about just before starting this podcast, because I said I saw the Fantastic Four. That's maybe another podcast, but in terms of the reactions by critics, like you said, like more people were giving Superman a hard time than Fantastic Four, but it's also because Superman has so much to overcome, like how many live action interpretations, movies and TV shows, how much comic book literature. And I feel like you said, like James Gunn, I feel like, is everything going to be perfect? No, it's never going to be 100% perfect. It's hard to be 100% perfect for everybody, but I feel like he did like an excellent job. I mean, I would give it, like, if I'm grading it I would give it on a scale from 1 to 10, the same thing as you, Joe. I'd probably give it a 9. And John, what did you get? Probably, if I was doing a 1 through 5, I'd give it 4.5.
9. Yeah. So it's a 9.
Yeah, his 4.5 is a 9. 1 to 10. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's
kind
where
of
I would
in agreement. Yeah.
It's a movie that I would definitely watch again.
I just did this morning.
So when it comes on HBO Max, I will definitely probably put it on and revisit it. But yeah, so audience, if you have not seen the movie, I think we're just going to dive into spoilers. We've been nice. Usually we go right into spoilers sometimes. So we're 10 minutes in.
We give you a chance to go out and see the movie, then come back to us.
If the movie is now, streaming, then the statute of limitations on spoilers is up. That's the way I look. That should be a new
rule.
Or mid-condition convention, or whatever you want to call it. Yeah. Once it starts streaming, the kid gloves are off on spoilers.
Yeah. Yeah. So we're going to go into spoiler territory. I think we'll just start the spoiler territory going into our highlights. So I'm sure we all have our highlights. I'll start because it's probably the lowest hanging fruit to highlight. Is Mr. Terrific was what a revelation that character is, considering I only know him from Jeremy Adams' Flash run and maybe a few JSA books written by Jeff Johns that he appeared in. But outside of that, like I don't know if that it seems to be the way Jeremy Adams kind of wrote him in his books. Maybe a little bit less snarky
Snarky.
or cool,
He
but
was also a big part of the Arrowverse near the end. As part of
yes,
Team Arrow. Yeah.
he was. But it was a different portrayal of like this guy was like, and I like how they did a genius. I'm multi-billionaire also, but made him different from Batman. Like you can, this Mr. Terrific and Batman have similar, like, I guess access to technology and brilliance, but they made him different. So it's not like when Batman shows up in this universe, it's going to be like, oh, we already have Mr. Terrific. I thought he stayed in a lane that was really cool, made him stand out. Yeah, so that's I guess one of my highlights I'm going to do is Mr. Terrific.
I concur. I mean, I thought he was maybe the best supporting character in the film, maybe even better than Lois Lane. He was so good, and I'm so happy they led with Mr. Terrific now, because now hopefully Gunn's Batman won't be a snarky, obnoxious, know-it-all, my way or the highway guy, because that's already been filled. That category's been filled. So maybe we'll get a more humanized Batman, something a little more akin to. I don't know. I'm trying to think of comical.
Batman the animated
Oh,
series.
there you go. Thank you, James. Batman the animated, because that Batman had a sense of humor,
Yes,
right? And obviously the Batman in I'm going to do it again. Snyderverse didn't, but so yeah, yes, I think now what is the actor's name who played
Mr. Terrific. Oh,
Eddie Gathegi.
Yeah.
Nice.
I don't know from him any other projects, but I am now a fan of this guy. Like you can't believe. And James, you just told me off air that there's going to be a possible TV series starring.
I heard that's what James Gunn's planning for Mr. Terrific.
Please
this is also the actors sort of this is great not this is like a redo into the comic book universe for, and I want to get his name right, Eddie Gathegi. You know his the last name? I'm awful at pronunciations. He was Darwin in X-Men First Class.
Oh, that's right. Yes, he
was. I always felt he was sort of done dirty.
Oh, I thought really? He was great in that movie, X-Men First Class.
Yeah, it's a good movie. I thought he was cool in that movie, and then sort of got dropped, from the whole franchise unceremoniously. And I felt this is a really cool relaunch. It's of course in the other universe now, moving from Marvel to the DC. So I feel like that's a little bit of revenge for the actor there. I love that. I loved him, by the way. Just a total shout out. He's brilliant in the Apple TV show For All Mankind.
I don't know
he plays another genius-like character. This is what this actor is really good at bringing to the screen, is a lot of sort of like subtle, deep dimension. So like may not be the main character, but you get the sense, oh, this is a really three-dimensional character, and man, when they need to, they can bring it. And that's what Mr. Terrific got to do. And I love I love that. I like the snarkiness, the sort of sarcasm. But yeah, he wasn't he has a role as a character very different than Batman or Lex Luthor, and he's definitely the counterweight to what Lex Luthor is in this movie.
Just thinking that, John. Yes, very much so. Yeah.
So well done, and it's sort of like saying that, what, you're probably going to be a little rough around the edges if you're that smart and that rich and that capable, but you don't have to be a supervillain. You can go on the other side.
I mean, and he has a sense of humor about himself too. Whether saying that like, oh look, a flying dog. Like,
he's this brilliant man who's Albert Einstein just about, and he sees a flying dog and he's taken aback by it. He probably didn't think of it first.
Before we even get to the main characters, I love going through like the small ones that build up to the main. I mean, Nathan Fillion brings it.
Oh my God,
yes,
he brings it, and
he made me like Guy Gardner.
He did, and the choice of Guy Gardner, who is always the unwanted stepchild of the Green Lanterns for a reason, was a hilarious, brilliant choice rather than many of the others who also will be able to be brought in now to this universe in some really interesting ways. But using Guy Gardner, who's who's definitely a problematic character, and he owns that so well. I did hear that Nathan Fillion was like, no, we need the haircut identical to the comic, and it needs to look stupid. Oh, and it was so good, which is what led us to the line. Was it like 200? It's like that's just stupid. How do you ever get laid? Well, 283 women disagree. the funniest damn thing. And that was the kind of comedy. I know some people think it's like too much or not, whatever it was. For me, it worked well. But it's also, this is James Gunn. Like, we know
There's going to be
what
comedic
we're
moments. Yeah.
what we're in for. Guardians of
Mhm.
the Galaxy. It's going to have light, humorous aspects, and not every joke or not every humorous moment is going to land for every audience member. Any more than a comedian is going to land every joke for every audience member. But this, I felt like it was the right dose because, yeah, this is a comic book movie. This is a superhero movie. At some point, you have to not take yourself too seriously. And I think that was the conceit of some of the earlier Snyderverse movies. Because again, like, it's easy to go like, oh, this is better, this is worse. It's a different style. He's coming from that 300 movie style,
Mm,
which I think really worked for that movie,
that's a great movie.
but it doesn't always land. You can do it for a while with Batman, and I think we got that with Chris Nolan. Um, but when you just look at the source material and you look at all these characters, you can't really go that dark for everything, and you certainly can't remove the color palette for everything. You can do that one or two movies where, like, oh, this is a Justice League dark. You could do that for the Apocalypse War. There are all these things where that would actually make a lot of sense. For a general DC universe, this is what I needed. This was the vibe I needed. That the right sprinkling of humor, the sort of bright colors, but it also had gravity because the characters we're talking about, like, yeah, Guy Gardner wasn't a terribly serious character, but you saw there was a little more to him, and he was fun. But then you get into the serious characters and the story, which is actually a very serious story, and they're not shying away from the real world consequences of the overall notion of superheroes and everything else. Which, to his credit, Zack Snyder did when he really addressed it in Batman vs Superman.
Yes.
That was an interesting way of going into that, of saying, well, we always make the joke of like how many people must have gotten flattened when all those towers fell and when Metropolis gets flattened. Well, they went dark with it and said, well, like tens of thousands, if not more, people got killed,
Got killed in that battle. Yeah.
and Batman is rightfully shaken up by it. I'll say though, it didn't. The story didn't work for that. And so I like the idea of exploring that, and I felt that this movie did it, if in a fantastical way. It addressed it by saying Superman comes in there and is like, I have to save everybody I can, including the squirrel. That's not gratuitous.
That's right, the squirrel. That's so cute.
It's meant to point that out. And Guy Gardner is not of that. Guy Gardner is like, I have to defeat the big guy, the scary monster, to save lives, but I just have to do it. And like, oh, collateral damage, like we're just, this is our job, we're doing it. To have that juxtaposition against Superman, that's the point, is to show that, well, they all have a role to play, they all have their points of view, and there isn't just one kind of superhero, but this is Superman, and he's not backing away from it at any point.
I mean, there was
Right.
camaraderie there too. I mean,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
he was upset Superman. I like the lines like, "Why couldn't we take it to an intergalactic zoo?" Which is
Yeah,
nice,
that's right out of the Silver Age
right out of
comics.
the golden age of Superman. But it's not like they were enemies. He just like they have a different approach to the whole thing. I'm sorry, Joe, I cut you off. You were going
No,
to say something.
no, exactly right. I mean, and we can assume that when Guy Gardner and the Justice Gang show up in in the war zone, and Guy is flipping off those tanks. And if you, but and then of course earlier in the film when Miss Terrific takes Lois to the encampment, which is apparently on the other side of the river on the beach, not too far from Metropolis. He's tossing those guys around. So I'm thinking there had to be some casualties in both those scenes of those soldiers, either were they working for the dictator or they're working for Lex Luthor. And again, that's a juxtaposition because Superman doesn't kill, and and he didn't want to kill the monster either, the kaiju. So, which is really cute when you think about it in the box. He was so good. Too bad he had to die. Could have shrunk him back down. He could have put him on Superman's interplanetary zoo in his
Yeah,
Fortress of
I'm
Solitude,
sure what Superman would have wanted.
which is what he would have done, right? So, but yes, there's a juxtaposition there of these heroes and Superman, and that's the way it should be. And I had thought that maybe there was going to be a scene at the end of this film where he kind of not gives them a tongue lashing, the Justice Gang, but hey guys, can we in the future can we tone down the violence and the the T.J. Hooker type of leaping, firing before, first, that type of stuff. So
What a good reference.
yeah.
I mean, I guess just I don't want to nitpick over like things like this, but I'm assuming at the end when Superman's using his heat vision on those LexCorp guys in the suits, that all of those guys were either robots or survived. Because again,
Well, they did
Superman
drop from the sky like birds going through a
yeah,
jet engine.
yeah. I don't know if because it seems like the Superman was preserving life, so it was like, were those guys okay? I guess those guys were.
Yeah, that's I had the same thoughts, James. What were they called again when he was introducing him to the Pentagon? Lex
Oh, I
Luthor?
forget because it was Ultraman, and then that's what he was selling to the Department of Defense, right?
Was it
Was
Earth
the
Force or something?
Earth Force? Yeah, Earth Force or something like that.
Well, when they called them in, the name that they gave them sounded like they could have been automatons. They could have been robots.
Okay, so
But he does hit one guy in the face and a tooth pops out.
he does. So. Yeah, he was not showing restraint, or I guess he was showing restraint because if Superman was to hit you, you probably your head would be removed from your shoulders as a mortal person. So, but
this Superman does throw punches. This is unlike Brandon Routh. That movie didn't call for a punch. Yes, this Superman does throw punches.
One of the things, I mean, I don't know if I kind of know it's on your list, Joe, of a few nitpicks, but some things we can get into. I don't know if changing the message of his Kryptonian parents was necessary so much to get what Lex Luthor wanted, or I guess making it definitive. Like it was never rolled back. Like I thought, it was going to be one of those things that it was going to be rolled back to the engineer or Lex Luthor took the message out of context, and that's not really what his parents said. But they never did that. And then Mr. Terrific also verifies that it was it wasn't an altered video. I thought you could have probably gotten the same juice from what Luthor was trying to do with Superman if he altered the footage, and then later it was I figured you get the same message without changing the nature of his Kryptonian heritage. It's not a big stumbling block. I just is something like I'm like I don't know if this leap of change was necessary.
Yeah, Keith and I had a long discussion over the phone last week about this. Too bad he's not here tonight. He has some reasoning behind that second part of the message that may not be all it's cracked up to be. And when you take things out of context, especially when you're translating literally an alien language from another galaxy, I don't care how good these translators on Earth are, or even for that fact, Michael Holt, aka Mr. Terrific, something's going to get lost in the translation. So, because the engineer has to go into the computers in the fortress to reestablish that second part of the message, right?
Yes. Yeah.
So, yeah, but if it stands like that, that's one of the nitpicky things that did bother me. I'm not a fan of Jor-El and Lara sending their son to Earth to conquer humanity. I'm more of a fan of Jor-El, aka Brando. They're a good people. They wish to be good. They only lack the light. For this reason, above all else, I send you my only son. Very Christian, obviously. But that's the kind of meaning I like. I like that better. But we'll see what this is going to be. More Superman.
Yeah, I mean, it's not like I said. It's not that they can't retcon it later. And it's not that they can't pick it up later. I just, like I said, it's these are very small nitpick, and it doesn't take away my love of the movie. I'm just sort of, like we're all storytellers here, and people will watch stories, and you sort of watch as like, was that a necessary change? And because I don't know if it really
interesting change, if not necessary. I'll tell you, like when I said this show reminds me of Smallville, that there was the evolution of the Jor-El character in that show as well.
Good point.
Seemingly a villain in the beginning, and certainly what I would call a character who has who's certainly not a positive character in so many ways until later on. The Jor-El here, we don't know. I like how they make it pretty clear. The director makes it pretty clear that message wasn't faked. And for the listener to be able to know, like this is the this is where the storytelling works really well, because the movie starts with a Superman defeated for the first time. By the way, I really liked the intro, the 333 stuff, like 300 years ago, 30 years ago, and then
basically countdown, yeah.
And 3 minutes ago, Superman was defeated for the first time. And you see him that as he's getting again, quick side note, I loved the Fortress of Solitude, the automatons, the robots, and the light healing, everything, which is it goes into so much more detail from the mythos, especially over the last 40 years. really well done. And I like, and they have it like he's an emotional character as well. It's not just a physical dimension of the character. Like, let's see him. They're like, oh, we put the automatons put on that video of his Kryptonian parents, and that is what focuses him. It's what inspires him, and it's a beautiful thing. And then to have that broken for him,
Mm.
that we lose, he loses, and the viewers lose that sense of like, oh, not only these good people, but these are the people who made Superman who he is. Um, is a really important story beat because it makes you question everything first of all, and then it makes the viewer ask the question: is Superman only Superman because this is what he's been told to do, and he's trying to please his parents or be the best version of a person that his parents wanted,
Right.
or that he thinks his parents wanted? You know, that's the other part. It wasn't even turns out not to be entirely accurate. So what does that make a person? And then that sets up the perfect contrast to his parents, Ma and Pa Kent.
Jonathan and Martha, right?
Oh, so good. And I loved their portrayals. This movie is all about reversals of like showing two characters against each other with diametrically opposed views, whether they're like intense or just sort of differing. And this was a swapping of Ma and Pa Kent. Pa Kent is the old softy, you know,
Mm-hmm.
and Ma Kent is sort of the tougher one, which plays against a lot of people's expectations of sort of the Midwest. But I feel like for people, and this is what a friend told me, who know the Midwest, they say no, that can be very very accurate. Like the strong, gruffer figure is often going to be your Midwestern mom,
Oh,
and your
very
dad
much so.
old softy, and I love that. And they both in what were relatively short scenes comparatively to what they did in some other movies really conveyed some beautiful things. And that speech from Pa Kent, and he's tearing up during it, and he's saying like,
Mhm.
your choices, your actions make you who you are,
Right.
and that he couldn't be any prouder, you know. And then you get towards the end of the movie, and the robots say, "Play his parents' video," and you think, "Well, that's kind of strange." And then it's all the home videos
Of the
of
Kents, yeah.
of the Kents, and that's when I teared up. I was like losing it again. I'm like, "All right, there's the emotional heartstrings. Can't help it." But at that point,
Well, especially the last scene is of Pacan holding him up, and he's pretending to fly, and
Fly, yeah.
it
yes,
like it's
You know, it's you think about it. The movie begins with Superman physically defeated, apparently for the first time, but he gets juiced up again in the fortress, and he goes back. He says, "I got to get back to the fray."
yep,
But when he's on the Kent farm, he is emotionally defeated, and he's not getting back up, even though he's revived. The next morning, he's gotten this. You know, his son has revived him again. He's sitting on the porch, and he's doubting who he is. And so the emotional defeat, the psychological defeat, is a lot worse than the physical defeat. And I think that's what and then Pa. I would have liked to have seen both Pa and Ma come out there and counsel them. But what you said, John, about women in the Midwest. I mean, as you know, guys, I'm a gigantic Western fan, and just watching, especially Gunsmoke, which takes place on the Great Plains, takes place in Dodge City, Kansas. Um, Many of the episodes, the strongest characters are the women. Their husbands may be stagecoach robbers, they may be bank robbers, they may be failed sodbusters, and these women have to do just about everything. Not only have 10 children, but rear them on, maybe a dollar a week. So, yes, there's a lineage that goes back to that part of our history where these are very incredibly strong women, and they're not in the face of anybody, whether it be other women or their quote unquote man, but they are to be reckoned with. So I
yeah.
did, yeah.
I also like his parents were in they just seem like regular people.
She's talking to the phone like
Yeah. I know that's it.
that's funny, and it's
that
like,
that cut across with like the with going on with him walking into the Daily Planet, and Steve Lombard is like giving him a hard time
yeah,
about
if you go back to Lois and Clark again, the strong one in the family was Martha, played by the late Kay Callan, and there's a scene where the first time they wind up there, Lois and Clark, and Lois goes, "I'm going to have to get this fax," and Lois tries to explain to Martha Kent what a fax machine is. It's just the '90s, and she just takes Lois into the dining room or something. Oh, you mean this, right? And she's shocked that this Midwestern woman not only knows what a fax is, but has one. So yeah, it's that's I think Mr. Gunn was looking at a lot of different iterations of live action Superman when he put this movie together, and I saw a lot of different things that, oh wow, I know where that's from. So yeah,
That wasn't the best part, and I bet you're going to go on to this. Is that the portrayal of Superman in this is a bit of an amalgam of different Supermans. I feel, um, but it also feels closest to Superman that we've had since the Christopher Reeve days. Like it's like there's something about, again, Brandon Routh, he channeled Superman really well. The movie didn't work
right,
for a
right.
variety of reasons, but I feel like if given the right chance, he really would have been a great Superman
I
for
completely
multiple
concur.
movies. And I'm
Yes.
sad we didn't get to see that.
Well, we got one last scene of him as Kingdom Come Superman in the crossover, and
In
Yes,
Crisis,
and
yeah,
that was just fantastic.
I
Just,
really appreciated that and
yeah,
loved that in that.
that's the highlight of that entire thing.
yeah. And he said that was a lot of closure for him too, like to do
Yeah,
that.
he did.
Like he
Yes.
said in interviews, like that was a lot of
Yeah,
closure to
yeah.
like that people still cared, and you know, a lot of fans
Yeah.
like us of the movie who liked him as Superman were like, oh, so many fans also got closure for that, you know.
There's touches for Christopher Reeve here. There's nods to that. There's obviously, as Johnson, there's nods to I think there's nods definitely to Brandon Routh Superman, because this is his Superman was also having a crisis of consciousness. What the old "Can you go home again?" That was his crisis. Um, there and the most recent Superman, Tyler Hoechlin. That Superman is older than all these other Supermen, and he's a family man. But I could see this Superman becoming that Superman in 20 years, because he's very much connected to his as the film progresses. He's very much connected to his rural roots, which if you watch Superman and Lois, it takes place in Smallville. So
Yeah.
yes, that Clark is very
It was interesting, like the portrayal of Superman, because I agree with what both of you are saying. Like he's an amalgamation. He's taking his inspiration from different live action Supermen and from the comics. But he's only been Superman what, for, as you said, John, 3 years, right? That was he's 3 years. He's Superman. It's interesting to see Superman, and I'm not saying it's wrong. Like just like I said, the emotion he shows when Lois is interviewing him is more emotion, I think, than we've seen in most live action Superman. Like you
yeah.
rarely see Superman like just passionately yell because he's upset. Like
Yeah, yeah.
people were
Yeah.
dying. Like you never see Superman really in any other, at least live action form.
Chris Reeve and Marco Kidder never yelled at each other. No,
And he wasn't necessarily yelling at her. He was sort of, I think, the point. Like he's being grilled on this thing by top notch reporter Lois Lane, and this is his true emotion. Like people are dying, and he's going to step in. It doesn't matter what's going on.
Well,
And you never seen that kind of emotion from Superman.
Well, you have seen it though, but not on the big screen. You've seen it in two iterations of Superman on the small screen. In Smallville,
Yes,
between Tom and Erica, and let's face it, the entire 4 seasons of Lois and Clark
that's
is
true.
completely them arguing. I mean, they argue more in that than they do anything else in that show, even after they're married. So yeah, we haven't seen it. That's the best scene between Superman and Lois in the movie, without a doubt.
Yeah, I
One of the
agree.
best scenes of the film.
No, it's not me. I guess I've just not seen it, and maybe Superman is like that more in the comics. I have not read enough like Superman
Yes,
just in general
during the Bernie era, especially. Yes.
to express it. But I thought it was good. I thought it was like it's good to see him so.
I think it was a more balanced perspective, of real emotion. We were getting a taste of that with Henry Cavill, but it was the anger of Superman. It was the frustration
Yeah.
at his circumstance, and it wasn't. It didn't feel like it was terribly nuanced, and it didn't feel like
Not at
there
all.
was enough exploration of what that really was. Like, I liked a lot of aspects of that movie too, Man of Steel, especially the first half for me. Um, and you are seeing like a more isolated feeling Superman, and a radically different portrayal of his father by Kevin Costner, and a different notion of Pa Kent, which is don't save people, protect yourself. The world isn't ready.
Oh,
I
God.
guess maybe you'll reveal it. Talk about a nitpick. I could do a whole episode on the philosophy of that one, but it was again. It was the problem with Snyder was it was going towards one angle, which was anger and darkness and frustration, which is why the movie had a wide appeal to certain slices of an audience, because it was just a manifestation of frustration and anger. which again I sort of thought we got from the Dark Knight trilogy, but we got more of a
Mhm.
resolution by the end. So that's what I didn't get from this. This one was okay. We'll take Superman. Take him more from the angle of the idealist. He's more of an alien because he is trying to see the good in everybody. And that's become so different
Mhm.
from the modern world as we know it, that that's what makes him more foreign than even his superpowers. And that's a really tough place to be in. And it's almost it's a little bit of naivete, almost youth, if you know,
Yeah.
not a derogatory sense. It's this sort of just like wide-eyed hopefulness, which is what Lois is calling him out on, because she's being very pragmatic. Like, did you call the president? What about the politics of it? What about the complexity of international relations? Because a politician and a president and a defense secretary are going to say the things she said. Well, we would love to save the thousands of lives, but the complexity is our international relations with this country to that country and the effect it has on that and this and that, and we have to be pragmatic. And we get that. We see it every day in the way our actual world plays out. And no one sort of really pushes back on that, whether it's, CNN or Fox or whatever network you're talking about. That discussion doesn't really take place. Superman was bringing in and saying, people were going to die.
Oh, right.
I stopped it. What more do you want? It's almost as if he's frustrated because he thinks Lois is saying those people should have died. Now she's not
He's
saying that,
not saying that, but yeah, I can see what you mean.
but the pragmatist is saying, but that's sadly necessary. And Superman doesn't accept that. He doesn't accept that there's no way to try to save lives. And yes, it won't always work. He won't always be. He couldn't save the kaiju. He couldn't save everybody that he was trying to, but he wanted to. And that leads me to what I think was the real genius and really the fun part of this movie is when he says that line, when she basically accuses him. It's in their second interaction when he's with the with the Justice Gang fighting the space monster
Oh yeah,
in the window,
big
basically, and
eyeball.
they're just
Yeah.
okay. And he's like, "No, I'm not going out there. They got this. They got this." Which again is a great setup for the world because that's how it is. Superman's not everywhere, and the Justice Gang isn't everywhere. Justice League isn't everywhere,
That was right outside his window, though.
right? Right. And she says to him, and she almost says like almost in sort of like, "I admire this in you, but I don't understand it. You try to see the best in everybody." And his response is, "Isn't that the most punk thing?" Because they had just been arguing about, did he really listen to real punk? She
Mm.
was the real punk rocker as a kid and listened to the real punk rock, and his was more pop oriented. I love that like little like nerdy music debate that happened. But that line, isn't that the real punk? That's a profound statement because um, that sort of encapsulates what a lot of the idea behind punk really is. People think of from the outside it's just an aesthetic or a type of music. It is very much on the outside and has this incredible sense of compassion towards others with a gruffness, with a sarcasm, with all these other aspects, and completely rejecting the normal mainstream. And so here you have Superman. He's rejecting the mainstream. The mainstream view is to be cynical, and he's like, no, actually, I'm not going to be cynical. I'm not going to say everybody's, irredeemable and that why try. He's going to do that, and that wove itself into the music. The music has
Mhm.
these guitar, things, and then of course the end. You see the posters in his
Oh,
child's
in his
room,
childhood, yeah, on the farm.
right? The
Mhm.
bands, the music they actually play. You realize, oh, this was James Gunn's idea was to take a bit of punk philosophy, weave that into the whole notion of Superman in his youth, having grown up obviously much later than the previous mythologies, because now we're talking about probably the 80s. Um, and it was just so neat to say, or the 90s really. Oof, God, that's harsh to think about.
Yeah, tell me about it.
But it's a great thing to see, and that was Superman. Superman is sort of punk.
I'm glad you explained that, John, because I don't know anything about punk rock, and
Yeah.
so that's the biggest highlight I'm taking away from this episode. Just you explained it. Thank you. But you know what? If that had been woven into Christopher Reeve, it might have been folk music
Mhm.
because that
Yeah.
was going against the current aesthetic of the time, against the quote unquote man and the older generation. So yeah, I kind of like the weaving of music in there as a metaphor for his beliefs and how he looks at the world. Yeah, that's cool.
I mean, it's the only way probably James Gunn knows to write a movie, anyways. By the he always writes it by the music. So,
Yeah.
like,
Oh, yeah.
if Superman came from a musical philosophy, like the foundation for this movie came from his philosophy on music, and then he just built the movie around it. That makes total sense for the director and what he's trying to achieve. Well, I mean, we've been going on this, but you brought it up in the beginning, John. I think we'll just keep going because like you kind of nailed the feeling. Again, if Smallville had been 4 years and then we got this movie, that's what I feel Michael Rosenbaum's Lex Luthor would have evolved into as well. Is that character? Because I feel like he's you know, again, I can't believe it doesn't fully come down to it, but it's still involved in real estate, which, okay, whatever. Like Lex Luthor.
I have that in here, but that's the small part.
I know it's the small part, but I feel like,
they had to do a nod to
it. Yeah, that's a nod. I have that in there.
I mean, how many movies?
I'll give you my nods.
But yeah, I feel like Michael Rosenbaum's Lex Luthor would have evolved into what Nicholas Hoult, who always does a fantastic job in whatever he's acting in. He does it, whether he's Beast or Lex Luthor, or he's in Mad Max, or he's an amazing actor. And yeah, I think his Lex Luthor was the most close to the comic book. I mean, my Lex Luthor will always be Michael Rosenbaum or Clancy Brown from the Justice.
I'm going to push back on your Lex Luthor, and but because that was one of my problems in the film. But if I may, I'd like to read you my what I saw as part of James Gunn taking from other movies and other Superman movies. The rift that's opened up in this movie reminded me of the gigantic Kryptonite island as it was expanding in Superman Returns. And where's everything headed? Straight toward downtown Metropolis, right off the water. So I got that vibe, right? Obviously, there is real estate involved to a small extent in this movie, from Superman the movie and Superman Returns. The nanites covering Superman's face. This one didn't hit me the first time, the second viewing. The nanites covering Superman's face after the fight in the baseball stadium is very reminiscent of the final scene in Superman 3 where Gus Gorman's computer starts eating Superman's face as it pulls him into the computer.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
So Superman 3.
I've seen horrified me as a kid. Horrified.
Yes, that
still scares me today, to tell you the truth. And then it's even, I can't believe it, but Luthor cloned Superman to make Ultraman from a strand of hair.
Yes.
Where have we seen that before? Superman 4. Now this time it was done better because they didn't show the ridiculous way Luthor did it in the worst Superman movie, one of the worst movies of all time. So that happened all previously to this film starting off screen, which is a good choice by James Gunn. But yeah, I mean, now we had two Superman movies where a clone is made from a strand of his hair. Superman better make sure he doesn't leave any hair around anymore because this is going to get worse. And I think there was one more. Let me see. Was it one from Smallville? I thought I had one from Smallville. Apparently not. Let's just look above there. I think that's it. Yeah, Superman Returns, Superman the movie, Superman 3, Superman 4. I had one from Smallville in my head, but I didn't write it down. Sorry. There was something from there. Oh, I know the other one. The final scene where, they finally embrace Lois and Clark, Superman and Lois, and they're floating upwards inside that real mall in Cleveland. I forget the name of it.
The arcade, I think?
The arcade, right. That's taken out of that's right out of an episode of Lois and Clark with them just floating up in an ardent embrace. And they're completely going through the atmosphere at that point. They're in space almost. So it's a little ridiculous. But yeah, I think James Gunn, not only using comic books as reference, was using past live action Superman for reference, and he weaved it in very nicely, I thought.
Yeah, we get a lot of the flavors. It's so much of it. I'm thinking, James, what you said about the Lex Luthor, and then hearing you, Joe's like, no, this was what I would call the more modern Lex Luthor. I always felt that, speaking from taking the movies, this felt like he was taking from Superman All-Stars, both the comic and the animated movie done, which I thought was really good. Where Luthor was obsessed, like Luthor is in many of the different things, which is also the Smallville one, is more obsessed with what Superman is in terms of what he represents as an alien and philosophically, not just as a threat to his criminal enterprise, because I feel like Luthor is originally like the greatest criminal mastermind that Gene Hackman brilliantly portrays, and later in Superman 2 becomes the more political mastermind. But even the way the movies play out, that was more of an like just like, oh well, he stumbled into that too. This was the Lex Luthor as political genius, scientific corporate genius. And given that this movie was filmed probably over a year ago, it's before a lot of the 2024 political stuff happened, but you can't help feel that there are inspirations taken from our sort of lionized tech figures and their flaws. And that's, and hence the actual casting of characters, they refer to people as tech bro,
Mm.
like the tech bros who work for Luther. It's a very deliberate attempt to manifest that. But that was a little bit of what I got from All Stars, was that Lex Luthor as, yeah, he's this genius, but a scientist, and he's obsessed with the idea that a non-human, non-Earth person is so powerful and telling Earth what to do, which is really what this Luther is all about. And then he has that brilliant speech. It's about envy. He was basically jealous of every scientist from Galileo onwards until Superman came on the scene.
Mhm.
And that diverted his envy over to Superman. But it's an insatiable black hole within Lex Luthor, this one especially, that he's jealous. Jealous, jealous, jealous. The envy, nothing is ever enough. And he's shifted it to, well, he wants to be the ruler, but also the quasi savior of Earth against some unknown enemy. In that case, it's Superman, because Superman represents something that's in opposition to him philosophically. But that goes back to All Stars a little bit. Now, this is the end of this sort of Superman story with that
Right.
one. But Luther has a brilliant moment that I think I'd be really curious to see if this unfolds. If we do a podcast years down the road, if they follow these movies up, that ends with Luther getting Superman's powers through a serum he's created from the DNA and all that stuff. This type of thing it only lasts a certain amount of time, and Superman is basically also a super genius scientist in that movie. He's been amped up by the sun, and he's dying. And Luther's powers are about to fade because Superman has preemptively used a gravity gun on him and actually changed the time for that. He's outsmarted Luther. And Luther sees something right before he loses his powers. He says, "Wait, I see it. I see everything. I
Never
see
knew
the
that.
world the way Superman sees it. I see everything from the molecules down to the subatomic particles. And oh, wait, everything's connected. Everyone's connected." It's a very Grant Morrison take on X-ray vision and how Superman sees the world both physically and philosophically. And then he loses the power and says, "No, no, no. I saw everything. I could have saved everybody." And Superman says at that point to a now human Lex again, and says, "Lex, you could have saved the Earth years ago if you had wanted to."
Mm.
That moment to me is a defining moment of Lex Luthor's Superman, everything about the DC universe. And I hope that's going to be an inspiration, because I see so much of that in this Lex. He's so obsessed, but he's so self-driven, and he has the capacity to do things. I mean, he opens up another dimension of space in this movie. He has how many countless metahumans imprisoned. He's developed all these technologies. He could make the world an amazing place, a beautiful, you know, place, and he's not. And Superman sees the world that way and wants the world to be that way. And you couldn't have more opposed visions. And yeah, could that be the end of this movie arc? That would be a really cool way to end this movie arc one day. Would be that Lex Luthor and that line. Lex, you always could have done that. I can see that being said to Smallville's version of Lex Luthor
Yeah.
years down the road. That would totally be that character, because he had it in him before. Depends on how he sort of goes. With that. And so this portrayal, the anger and the emptiness, and yeah, the definite comparisons to our tech billionaire overlords, at that. It's not any one of them in particular, though I can definitely, I could do a whole episode on drawing comparisons to the
Yeah. To
various
the different ones. Yes.
billionaires we have out there right now. But he has that power, he has that influence, and look what he's doing with it. And look what the government's doing with it. They're very cynical, like, well, all right, I guess we gotta like have a weapon against Superman, because look, he's opposing our international agenda. And Lex, who we know is a problem, we know he's a villain, we know he's a criminal, but he's giving us the tools we might need to stop Superman, and that's more important. What a modern story to take that context, because Superman historically is this very, you know, they even explored that in some positive and negative ways. It's like, oh, what was the one where he was working with President Reagan and has to break from him at one point.
Legends, right after,
Yeah,
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 it was about a year after Christ on Infinite Earths when they were
right,
resetting the
right.
universe. Legends, yeah.
And that's the problem. How do you
Reagan
have
actually fell
Superman?
asleep on one of those books.
How do you have a Superman in a world where you have leaders, politicians, dictators, and others who are making decisions that are killing many people? And what does Superman do in that? Does he just follow what the leader says must happen? Or does Superman follow his own conscience? We have the answer in this movie. He follows his conscience and makes an enemy of the U.S. government, makes an enemy of foreign governments, makes an enemy of Lex Luthor and everybody else.
Enemy of the people, yeah.
Yeah. And the movie ends with the secretary and whoever else it is in there saying,
Colonel Flagg.
well, they're calling the shots now. And that's another thing to explore. Like, well, that's a problem too, because who's calling the shots? It's not just Superman. What about the other metahumans? What are their motives? What's their morality? And everything else. So much set up from this movie for future movies to really explore that with or without Superman. You can do you can do movies so many without Superman, Green Lantern movies. I think there's a series coming out for Green Lantern.
Yes, there is.
I'm so excited for all of those because if they really lean into exploring that, something that the DC universe wasn't doing in the previous movies, they were very, very surface level movies, very action packed. They were meant to really give you everything you wanted from an action movie, and I think that's why they didn't work compared to the Marvel movies because the Marvel movies weren't dramatically different, but they had that extra humor, extra lightness while building a story arc, even if it wasn't super deep. And talking about, Marvel's not really discussing modern issues to any relevant extreme. This movie is
No,
doing that.
they did that in Captain America: Winter Soldier, though.
Oh yeah, what am I talking about? That's my favorite one of them.
Yeah,
Thank you. Oh geez,
yeah,
yeah, that was right off the, which is maybe why it's the best movie
yeah, exactly.
of the Marvel universe. But here you have Superman. What does Superman represent? And I like what he represents in this. It is political, but it's almost anti-political.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
Well, he doesn't see any boundaries. Like he's just like he
Yeah.
would save anybody. I mean, if he could, Superman would save everyone.
Yeah.
Which, that's
He's
always
not
the
interested
choice.
in what country you're from, what ethnicity you are, where you should be, where you shouldn't be, what your politics are, what political party you are. He wants to help. And that's scary to somebody whose identity is built around my tribe is correct and must conquer the other one. As I cannot remember the names of the two countries, that the made up countries in this movie.
Moravia, and I can't pronounce the other one because of I just can't pronounce it.
Yep. And
That's
Superman says something interesting about that other country. He says, because they refer to the country as having been a really problem of a country, and he says, well, they've made great strides recently. He's trying to point out that like just because they've been a problem in the past doesn't mean they get to be pulverized in. And yes, I know many people try to draw out the comparison and make it about statements about the current politics. Well, it is statements, broadly speaking, about what's happening in the world now. It's not saying, I didn't take away from this movie that you must draw a direct parallel, but it's saying, look at it through this lens. People are dying. What if Superman were in the world, our world in this moment? Would he just be saying, well, we got to follow the political game? Or would he be standing on the battlefield, putting a hand up to the tank and saying, no further? Like, you don't continue to kill people. You have to find a better way. That's the Superman I really think is truly Superman.
Yeah.
I would agree with that, but I also think that's a Pandora's box you could be opening up for the rest of these movies going down the road.
Exactly.
Right. So you got to, and I'll be interested to see how Gunn handles this because that's because the notion in the comics is, well, why doesn't Reed Richards just stop global warming? He can do it. He can probably do it in a weekend and figure it out, right?
Yeah.
Why doesn't Superman again stop all the wars, whether they be in the Middle East or in the Far East or wherever they are? Why doesn't Batman put acid on the Joker's brakes? He's killed thousands of people and he constantly escapes.
Right.
Why hasn't Batman killed the Joker or somebody else? Guy Gardner. All right, Batman, get out of the way. I'm taking care of this nut job right now.
Right.
So these are good questions. There's a series that just came out. It's finally finished by Mark Waid and Brian Hitch. Superman: The Last Days of Lex Luthor. A lot of what you just talked about, John, is the backbone of that book. Luthor is dying, and Superman's not going to make him die. And I'm not going to give away the ending, but it shocked me. The ending shocked me, but at the same time,
what is it called again?
Superman: The Last Days of Lex Luthor. It's a
It's
three
on
issue.
Hoopla.
Yeah,
It's on
it's on
Hoopla.
Hoop.
Yeah,
Fantastic.
Yeah, I think you should
yeah.
read it. It's gorgeous, beautiful artwork. But the ending, while it shocked me, is very much Superman. So kind of like this movie, his actions shocked me, but at the same time, that's Superman. And
Yeah.
he would be the most controversial character if he lived in our real world, not only because of his superpowers, but because of his ethics, his empathy, his compassion, which seems to be bleeding from our world now as we
Yeah.
sit here. So yeah,
I think that's why the movie spoke to me so much, is because that's been, as you said, bleeding out of our world, and then to see this again, saying like, oh, but this is who Superman was represented to us on screen. But now it's making it really clear, and Superman is that message of hope. He's also flawed. You see him wrestling with things, and that's the point too.
mhm,
Superman isn't a god,
yeah,
and he's not right about everything, and he won't be able to calculate out all the consequences of his own actions. So even with the best of intentions, there will be unexpected fallout, and things that, well, maybe you did save 10,000 lives, and that put into another thing that cost other lives, and you didn't know it. Life is never so cut and dry, but he didn't have to compromise himself, and he
right.
chose not to compromise himself. He didn't say, "Oh well, my parents, I guess, were sort of conquerors, or wanted me to be a conqueror. I guess I should go be that." Who he is intrinsic, but not because he's also super special. It's sort of saying, well, he was raised by really um, good but regular people. They weren't, again, his parents aren't magical. They're not super people in the sense of that they have a moral code that is above everybody else. They were just genuine for what they were, trying to do the best they can, and they really got that through. I've always said I'm not a parent myself, so I can't speak to what it is to have that experience. But I've always thought from the outside, it's very easy to mess kids up. Um, it's really hard to try to help them become good people, but it's by no means impossible. It's something that you do your best with that. You don't have control over it, but if you do your best, you have pretty good odds that they're going to be good people. And that's the sense I got from Ma and Pa Kent. They did the best they could. They were genuine people. And as a result, they got a genuine son who's going to
Yeah,
have to wrestle with all kinds of things throughout his life, but he's real. And that's what makes him accessible. It's like saying, hey, you can be that too. Like, you don't have to be Superman. You can just try. I mean, the other characters, you saw them manifesting that in and of themselves and having to wrestle that. I mean, talk about Jimmy Olsen having to argue on his own low level, which I thought was a funny way, like his own morality of like, oh, what do I do about this? Oh, this woman I really don't want to get with, but
He's
I sort of
Tessmacher.
do and I don't. Am I going to be a player? I love the fact that they made him a player, but you're not sure why everybody's so into him, why everyone was obsessed with him, but you're like, why? But, okay, sort of see it. Very funny thing. And of course, having Eve Tessmacher as the spy who gets all the information out through selfies. Brilliant take.
She
Era.
saved the day.
He
She's
saved the
She
day.
saved the day. Yeah,
And what is more
wittingly
2025?
saved the day. Yes. It was nice to see Jimmy. This is the first live action Jimmy Olsen in a movie that got something. He basically broke the story, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yes.
and so and interestingly enough, Jimmy's not a photographer. For many for decades, they can't make up their mind. In the comic books, in TV, in movies,
Yeah.
Jimmy's a photographer. Jimmy's a club reporter. Jimmy's a reporter. Jimmy's a reporter. He's not. I didn't see him with a camera. Did you?
No.
In this film?
No,
And I,
yeah, he's
I,
a
I
reporter.
found that.
Yeah.
And
And
he
he got
also
his
has freckles.
and he got his way. This is the first byline, right? He wrote it
Yeah,
with
yeah. You know,
yes. I
I
like
don't
though, like he's
call
trying to
me
save.
Perry, kid.
Yeah, he's trying to
But what?
save the world, and she's like, "How long do I have to spend with you? A weekend? A whole weekend?"
Oh,
Like,
weekend.
I love how he sort of softens at the end there, and he's like, "Wait, you know, it was such a great." This is something that I really thought this movie explored really well, and I don't want to go down this too much. This is podcast again; it would be a whole episode in it. But I thought that in something we've been lacking in movies, there's a lot of cultural discussion about masculinity, and I thought this movie presented such brilliant positive portrayals and strong portrayals of masculinity that have been lacking in other movies. They weren't toxic versions, and like he on Jimmy Olsen, a bit of a player. He's not
Yeah.
even sure why he's a player, but he's sort of like a young kid, like getting all this attention from women. He doesn't know what to do with it. He's sort of taking advantage of it, and you see him growing as a person throughout the movie in his little scenes. Really good stuff. But the portrayal of Pa Kent, the portrayal of Superman's relationship to parents, decision, strength, everything else. I was like, oh, that's what I hope is also another thing is how do we really address the importance and strength of masculinity without the toxic components in our popular culture. And I feel like this movie nailed it. It really nailed it, because I feel like if you are a young person and you're looking for that sort of that lacking sense, we got the Snyder sort of version of like masculinity is just punching things, being angry and violent, and there was nothing else really given to us from that. But here you have Superman again, and it's like, oh, there's another portrayal of masculinity. And always in Superman, you had the balance of that. Like historically, it was the femininity of Lois Lane, and that evolved through the 40s, 50s, 60s, and now onwards. This was a unquestionably strong woman. Ma Kent was an unquestionably strong woman, and they didn't have to prove themselves. There was no,
I was
oh, well,
thinking that when I was watching
yeah,
the second time
they
today.
just were. So it was like, oh, we have a balance of energy here. When they were
Mhm.
arguing, there was nobody who was overpowering the other, and somebody was like, the victim, and this was they were just two strong people who had strong senses of who they were, what their values were, what the worldviews were, and to see that come to a head. You weren't like, well, they're right, they're right. It was just, wow, look at this interaction, look at the struggles they have, and then seeing their relationship come. You see Clark Kent is cooking for her. And I will say that uh, uh, what they also did, speaking of masculinity and other things, they didn't do the tight costume with him like Henry Cavill's, the very muscular one.
Yeah, well,
The actor,
that
David
was
Cornsett, it is incredibly well built. And the irony is you actually get to see that, if you're paying attention, when he's in his dress clothes
he's
and
a big
not
guy.
so
Yeah.
much in the Superman outfit. I thought that was fascinating to me.
Yeah, I
Well,
like the realism of the Superman outfit too.
Yeah, yeah.
that's taken from the comics. If you look back, Gunn said he was mining Silver Age Superman. If you go back to this early Silver Age and you look at the three artists that drew Superman in the Silver Age, Wayne Boring, Al Plastino, and then Kurt Swan. It was Kurt Swan who finally kind of like toned him down a bit, and gave him more, made him more cut and whatnot. But he's still broad, very broad. It's it's very Silver Age. His look is very, and of course the trunks are there, and
The
we said
trunks, yeah, the trunks there.
they're old man trunks too, because if you look at the trunks on different Supermen, obviously Brandon Routh, the trunks were tiny. I mean, and they were the wrong color too, by the way. The cape, it wasn't red; it was maroon. The cape, the trunks, and the boots. I mean, his trunks were bigger than friggin' George Reeves's trunks.
Well, I thought he like I said, it's like he looked like a professional wrestler a little bit. Like that's what they would wear. Like
Yeah.
but it worked for the outfit. I guess it made him like again more of a human touch to it. I mean,
And
we're
kids
never
love
told.
professional wrestlers, so
I
maybe
mean, we're
not
never
kids.
told if Ma Kent made this costume for him, but I'm assuming
She
this
does
is
say, "I'll get your boots." So
right.
there's some connection there.
She does. I mean, sometimes he gets it from the fortress, but it seems like this is a Earth made by his ma who made the suit for him, or at least the early iterations of it that he's improved upon. And it seems very, it just if it's like a piece of clothing. It's not like a piece of spandex.
Yeah.
Yeah,
He's,
yeah.
Another choice that Mr. Gunn made in this film was, I believe I am correct in saying, there's no flashbacks, right?
no, just
I guess the
I don't
message from
remember.
Krypton is kind of like a
the
flashback,
messages and the home videos, I guess,
and the
but
home
no.
videos, yeah. But I mean, that if when two characters fight in a film who are supposedly in love, that one leaves and one may have a flashback to when they first met. My initial, James, you remember this, so we texted about this. I thought that there was a bit of a lack of romance missing from this movie. I thought the most romantic thing in this film was Clark cooking breakfast for dinner for Lois. That's
Yeah.
romantic. I would have liked to see more of that. Obviously, the kiss at the end when they're embracing and twirling up towards the top of the arcade, very romantic. But I would have liked to see maybe a flashback to when they're they sparked their romance, so to speak. I thought that was missing. I think of Margot Kidder in that interview with Superman on the roof of her
Mm.
penthouse apartment on the salary, and how and just it's so romantic. Obviously, the flight it's so romantic, and I just would have wanted to see maybe a little more of that. That was one of my major, and it's for Lex Luthor. John, I cannot dispute anything you've just said. You've opened my eyes a lot more about him than watching it 2 times, but I still think there are other Lex Luthors I like more, and that is Michael
Yeah, yeah.
Rosenbaum and Michael Cudlitz. You know what? It's so unfair because Superman and Lois is so recent, and I shouldn't be comparing this to that, but that Luthor was just so visceral and so
Mm.
freaking mean and nasty, but coming from a different angle, not from so much envy, but from I don't know how to explain this, but more from a primal, I think a primal hatred of Superman, going beyond envy. So I was looking for more of that. Otherwise, though, I mean, those are two nitpicky things, but yeah, I think Lois and Clark have their moments in the film. I think we,
Yeah. I mean, I would. I mean, we texted a little bit, Joe. I mean, I wouldn't disagree. I think. I appreciate the fact that this movie is 2 hours long and it doesn't feel like 2 hours because, like,
no, it doesn't.
as much as I love all these like the comic book movies, like some of them when I see a movie now any movie that's 2 hours and 40 minutes or 2.5 hours, I'm like, does it have to be 2 hours and a half? Like, I love this stuff, but does it have to be that long?
I have a
And,
bladder problem with that, so yeah.
yeah, and I think James Gunn, because we texted like, well, maybe he could have left out some of the stuff with the Justice. Like, I think he was doing a lot. I feel like it was a lot. I'm not saying it's wrong. Like, I mean, there could have been more romance. There could have been more Superman and Lois and their romance. But I think it was, I feel like he gave us a little bit of cross section of everything, and
Yes, I'll agree with that.
he landed a really hard plane. Like, and he landed it well, considering like you got to give us Superman and Lois. He's got to give us Ma and Pa Kenny. He's got to give us Jarrell and Lara. He's got to give us Lex Luthor. He's got to, and then he's got to set it in a active DC world. Like, I feel like when I watched it,
Superman, it was the DC world this time.
Yeah, I feel like when I'm in there,
universe, right? Yeah,
yeah, like I feel like watching this movie, like, oh, Batman exists, we just don't know where he is, or
Right.
like
there's a Flash out there.
There's a Flash out there. There's a Martian Manhunter out there.
They had Peacemaker, making which talk about cross merchandising with that. I mean, that was hilarious. Which also talk about again. That's in this universe, and you're like, oh, okay, that's why he's really resentful. He's like, he doesn't have the superpowers like that. There was so much to do, but I feel like James Gunn because he had so much experience with Guardians of the Galaxy, an ensemble cast, all the different mythos of Marvel that were woven into that movie, or the multiple movies. There were so many of them that he really showed that he can do that. He can take all these different threads, pull them together to make a movie without it becoming too messy. And you're right. Landing that plane is not easy. It's hard enough just to do a Superman movie, to do all these different things, and then the two parts we haven't gotten to, which leads into the ending, is first of all, you're like, well, where does Krypto come from? Because you have the dog the whole movie. Which again, my only complaint about that was initially, listen, this is what we do. We're comic book nerds, and we look at something and say, well, why wasn't he a golden retriever or a Labrador retriever? But you know what? This dog grew on me. After the first few scenes, I was like, oh my God, I love this dog. And at first, why is he so unruly? And why doesn't Superman really know how to control him?
We know why at the end of the film. We know why.
At the end of the film, it's like, there's Supergirl coming back. She went off to a planet to party with a red sun so she could get drunk. And I'm like, oh, it's that Supergirl. Because yes, she's older, but now they're the same age. But it's the whole time thing of when she got there, she was supposed to protect him. And what's going to be Supergirl's role now? Really a fun way to introduce her. The dog and everything else. I thought the idea of having the slightly untrained super dog was so much fun, because again, it gave you comedy for that. And for all the people complaining about that, I'm like, that's part of the mythology. That's part of the fun. And you could never do this before maybe the last 15 years when we had the technology to really do Superdog.
Right.
It's just there's
Or the
no
language of superhero movies anyway. Like the language of a superhero movie now is commonplace enough where you can be like,
yes,
okay, I can
yes,
accept this. I can accept the super dog. I can accept
Yeah,
it.
no, the dog was great. He was cute. He was mischievous. I mean, again, we find out why at the end.
get the
Yeah,
ball,
I mean,
get the ball.
this Supergirl is not Melissa Benoist at all. This is a complete departure from the Supergirl from the
Complete.
Arrowverse. But that's okay. Well,
And who I love, and I like the idea that if we're going to take this from that, the idea of these are these brilliant stories as told by dozens of writers over the better part of a century, and now we're doing that again. You're like, well, just do it well. I think that's my only requirement now of a writer, and the actors involved in this are you know yes, we'll all nitpick things, we'll have this, but if you do it well, you'll probably get me on board. If you make it really good, and you make it compelling, and that's it all the way to the end. um it got me for that, and I felt, and it's a good one. I'm like, I just want to see more. I wanted to go back. I didn't get a chance to see it again. I'm considering buying the digital copy before I get the physical copy. Though if you do buy the physical copies when that come out on September 23rd, you do also get your digital copy through iTunes or Amazon,
oh, that's cool.
or or,
All right.
um, um, or Vudu. So any of those services, you will get it. But I'm a big believer, again, physical media. If you want to preserve something in the long term,
I completely concur. I agree also, yes.
you never
Um,
know.
I have two questions for you guys. Okay, one, Lois is not an army brat in this film, right? She said she's from Baker Line, which is a suburb of Metropolis. So can we
Uh,
assume that Lois is not an army brat? Because no mention of General Lane at all.
I
So that's
guess we can assume, but who knows? Like
yeah.
again, he's had so much to get in there, so
Okay. And the other one, which is bigger and I think more important, Superman apparently and Superman Luthor meet face to face when he busts into his office looking for the dog, right? So does that mean that this Luthor, again, Silver Age, is supposed to be Silver Age, this Luthor did not grow up in Smallville? Can we assume that also? This is more of a John Byrne type of
Mm.
Luthor
yeah,
that they meet the first time in Metropolis.
it's kind of one of those things that's like we can assume that until the future when they decide that's a good. They didn't do anything to imply it, but they didn't do anything to exclude it either.
Yes, yeah, okay, all right.
Because
Again,
it's not
like you said, he had to get so many
because
things.
I mean, if you remember, like when he was in the prison, like he mentions, like maybe I'll get that reporter friend of yours, Clark Kent,
Clark Kent.
which either like he's just well versed with who the main reporters are on the Daily Planet, or he remembers Clark from Smallville.
Well, that's a good point. I didn't think of that because it's Silver Age Superman, Luthor and Clark, Luthor and Superman. But there's Silver Age Superman where it's just like it's Smallville. It's just Clark and Lex. That Lex doesn't, till the end to find out about his superpower. So okay, yeah, all right.
Yeah.
Oh,
So.
remember the hypnotic glasses mentioned in the film?
Yes, that was good. Yeah.
There it is.
Wow.
It's canon. Well, it was canon in the '70s, and then it was discarded by John Byrne. But this is my original copy. I went out and bought another copy off of mycomicshop.com the other day, thinking that this could be a key. So
That's great, Joe. Yes.
and Superman has fought kaiju's in the past, including giant gorillas with kryptonite vision.
My last thing, I guess, before we'll just sign off, is like I love Guy was like, you know about the hypnotic glasses. Like, why would you tell me about the hypnotic glasses if I didn't know about the hypnotic glasses?
Yeah, that was good. That was a great exchange. And then when she walks out, she says, when she berates his haircut. She got it in, man. She got the final zing in that conversation.
Yeah. Well, listening audience, I hope you enjoyed this. Our finally, we got to talk about Superman. James Gunn Superman. I hope you enjoyed this episode as much as we did recording it. Of course, I could not have done this episode without my other two hosts. So thank you very much, Joe.
Oh, you're welcome, James. As I've saying very much in the past, very often, this was a hoot.
This was a hoot. And thank you very much, John.
Oh, so glad to be here.
Yeah, the insights you both always give, they always give me more intro and introspection about the movie, about my thoughts and feelings about it, and I will have to take this in and really when I'm viewing the movie again, think about some of these things also. I'm sure we will be talking about this movie in future podcasts anyway, just because of all the thoughts we had and we didn't get to talk about. So, listening audience, again, if you have your thoughts about Superman the movie, however you're listening to this podcast, you can probably leave a comment somehow. We thank you for listening, and we will talk to you on the next episode.